Welcome at long last to AU's National Advocacy Summit. I'm Rachel Lazar, the President and CEO of Americans United. 18 months ago, when we envisioned this conference, we never imagined how different the world would look. Even though I'm not able to welcome you all to Washington, D.C. in person, I'm so excited to have the opportunity to bring hundreds of us together across the country for 2 days of learning, of connecting, and making some noise about church-state separation, which is so important, especially right now. Because 18 months ago, who could have imagined that AU would have an even more crucial role to play than we already do in protecting our fundamental freedoms? We were already facing such unprecedented challenges. We are fighting forces that want to turn America into a country where we could be turned away from our doctor, our dream job, our local taxpayer-funded foster care agency, just because we don't pass their religious litmus test. And yet, over these past 6 months, AU has played an even more crucial role. When some were claiming that houses of worship should have a religious right to convene even during a pandemic and defy public safety orders, AU was there. We filed 28 amici briefs to guide courts in understanding that claims of religious freedom do not entitle houses of worship to risk people's lives. And in the 17 courts that have ruled, we won in 14 cases. We've exposed this administration's exploitation of COVID-19 to funnel our tax dollars to fund religious education and religious institutions, including even clergy salaries. And we've called out Trump's racist actions that he disguises in the cloak of religion for what they are: white Christian nationalism. Who could forget when the government tear gassed so many peaceful protesters who were rightly outraged about the murder of George Floyd, just so that the president could clear a path to walk for a photo op and take a picture in front of a nearby church? You know why you're here. We're coming together to save our democracy. We're here because we know that our Constitution promises each and every one of us the right to practice whatever religion we choose, or no religion, so long as we don't harm others. And we know that it's our right, our duty, to fight for this country to attain its promises. A country where a grandfather from Nigeria can visit his newborn granddaughter in Nebraska without fear of religious persecution at the border. A country where non-religious people can serve openly and proudly at every level of government in California and in Alabama. A country where a trans teen in Chicago can go to school during the day and access the shelter she needs at night, knowing she'll be safe and welcome. And a country where a woman with her family and her trusted resources, and not the state, gets to decide if it's the right time to grow her family. Because that is what real religious freedom looks like. To the hundreds of you who've shown up at this crucial moment in history, welcome and thank you. I'm so proud to be in this work with each and every one of you. I hope I'm visible. Am I, Sarah? Yes, hello and welcome back, everyone. This is our National Day of Action. Yesterday was incredible. 790 of you joined us. But right now, our cup runneth over, because I cannot imagine a better way to kick off our National Day of Action than to be joined by two of our greatest champions out there in Congress. Congressman Bobby Scott and Congressman Joe Kennedy, who are both here live to talk with us. And you should know that they are both lead sponsors of the Juno Harm Act that we'll be lobbying on later today, with 116 meetings on Capitol Hill. So let me bring Congressman Bobby Scott on, if we can see him. I can't, but Sarah, can you let me know when he's here? I wanted to introduce him.
I think I'm here.
Oh, hello, welcome. I am so delighted that you're able to be with us today, Mr. Scott. And let me give you a brief introduction and then turn it over to you. So Congressman Bobby Scott has represented Virginia's 3rd Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives since 1993. He is the chairman of the House Education and Labor Committee, and he has been fighting to protect the separation of church and state for decades. He is steeped in the issue with a deep knowledge of the law and is one of the biggest champions of our issue in Congress, and boy, are we lucky. I remember meeting with Mr. Scott in his office and him telling me that one of the reasons he connects so strongly to our issue is because of our country's history of the misuse of religious freedom to discriminate and to advance racism. And that connection, sadly, is still very much alive today. And AU is exposing it and fighting it. Mr. Scott joined Representative Kennedy as the lead sponsor of the Juno Harm Act, and last year, he held a hearing in his Committee on Education and Labor called Juno Harm, Examining the Misapplication of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and it highlighted the Juno Harm Act. He kindly invited me to testify at that hearing. Congressman Scott, thank you so much for your many years of work and your true dedication to this issue. Thanks for being such an amazing friend to Americans United, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for your very kind introduction, and thank to all of the Americans United members for your critical work to preserve religious liberty and the separation of religion and government. Religious liberty is a fundamental American value, but there's an important balance between protecting religious liberty and protecting the rights of others. In fact, over 2 centuries ago, the General Assembly in my home state of Virginia adopted the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, authored by Thomas Jefferson. This would later serve as the basis for the First Amendment, outlining our right to religious free exercise and the prohibition of the establishment of religion by government. The Virginia statute warns us against allowing religious views to supersede civil rights by stating, and I quote, "All civil rights have no dependence on our religious opinions any more than our opinions in physics or geometry." And that notion still holds true today. When Congress passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, or RFRA, in 1993, it was intended to protect religious exercise, particularly for faiths that have been historically mistreated. Unfortunately, this administration has used RFRA not as a shield, but as a sword to attack anti-discrimination protections and to allow federally funded religious discrimination in federal contracts, foster care programs, a spectrum of federal programs. The administration has also used RFRA to deny access to health care and federally funded social services for some of our most vulnerable citizens. It is clear that Congress can no longer ignore the misuse of RFRA. Now, one of the things that's been happening over the years is that the definition of a victim of discrimination has changed. The victim of discrimination used to be the one discriminated against, such as a potential employee who is not hired, or a customer who is denied service on account of religion. Yet the different definition now of religion seems to be that those who feel their religious liberties are violated if they cannot discriminate against others based on religion. And that's why I joined Joe Kennedy to introduce the Don't Do No Harm Act, which would restore RFRA to its intended purpose and prohibit religious exemptions from laws regarding civil rights, child abuse, labor protections, and healthcare. Simply put, religious liberty should not be used as a weapon to inflict harm on others in violation of their civil rights. So Rachel, I plead on you to continue to make your voices heard in Washington and across the country. Together, we must protect our basic civil, legal, and human rights from those who would erode those rights under the guise of religious freedom. So thank you, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you to strengthen our civil rights and to preserve religious liberty. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to see Joe Kennedy coming up next. He's been a strong supporter and leader on this issue.
Congressman Scott, thank you so much. If you can stick around for a few questions after Congressman Kennedy speaks, great. If not, we thank you so much for being with us. And now, in an embarrassment of riches, I am going to introduce Congressman Joe Kennedy. Can we bring Congressman Kennedy on camera, please?
Thank you, Rachel.
Hello. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I am so pleased to introduce you, Mr. Kennedy. Congressman Kennedy represents the 4th Congressional District of Massachusetts since 2013, and nationally, Mr. Kennedy has become a powerful voice for social justice, championing issues like transgender rights, marriage equality, pay equity, and comprehensive immigration reform. He's also become a powerful voice for religious freedom, evidenced by his introduction of the Juno Harm Act. And how about the fact that as of today, we're at 209 co-sponsors, not far from 218. We so appreciate your work and dedication to ensuring that religious freedom is a shield and not a sword. Congressman Kennedy, you've provided incredibly compelling testimony twice before congressional committees in support of the Juno Harm Act. You've written op-eds, participated in our staff briefings, and I know for our Vice President Maggie Garrett, when you participated with her, that was a peak experience. We are so grateful that you made this bill a reality and that you've been a tireless advocate for its passage, and we're so grateful that you're here with us today.
Rachel, thank you for the incredibly kind words, for your efforts in advocacy over the course of your career and obviously at AU. And thank you for once again highlighting the importance of this legislation. Thank you for your advocacy, your virtual advocacy efforts today. And I have no doubt with your push, we're going to get that number over that finish line, 9 more to get us to 218, which is a critical number, obviously, for signal of support in order to get this bill passed out of the House of Representatives. And clearly, we would not be where we are today without the diligence and the courage of Chairman Scott. It has been his leadership on these issues and so many others in his committee, and the reputation that he's built up over so many years of service here in Congress that has enabled us to build together, to build the support that we have, and to explain to some of our colleagues why this is so necessary, because the law can be a little bit complicated here, as you all know. I want to be respectful of, 1, the desire for folks to get a couple of questions, 2, of the chairman's time, and 3, of the fact that votes have been called here in Washington, so we don't have a ton of time. So I'm going to keep these comments relatively short and basically say that everything the chairman said was right. So we can start with that. And to build on it very, very briefly, and I don't think if you folks are on this Zoom, you don't need any more convincing from me. You're here, you know it, you live it. But what we've seen over the past 4 years has brought a stark focus on how vulnerable the most basic human rights and fundamental freedoms can be when you have a government that seeks to rank them and seeks to say that some are more valuable than others. We've watched this administration launch attacks over and over again on the rights of women, on communities of color, on religious minorities, on the LGBTQ+ community, and so many others under the guise of religious freedom, doing exactly what the chairman said, flipping the definition of who is in fact a victim and making it the person who actually discriminates rather than the victim of that discrimination. We've seen them appoint judges to lifetime appointments who will proudly work to ingrain that imbalance even deeper in our laws and into our society. And that's why we need to pass this bill. It seeks to recalibrate, on the one hand, continue to celebrate the role of religion in American society, but seeks to recalibrate it so that it is a shield and not a sword. So it cannot be used as a tool of discrimination to impose one's religion or one's views on someone else, but to defend those views from affront. We need to get there. We need activists and advocates. We need allies and accomplices. like all of you on this call today, to hold your elected officials accountable, and when they commit to standing with you on these battles, and not to shy away when it becomes uncomfortable. Having all of you here join us this morning is an incredible moment for me, and I think for all of us that understand the importance of this legislation, the importance of this moment, and the trajectory by which we see some forces in our society today continue to try to build upon this infringement to limit the rights of others. So thank you all for being here. Rachel, I'll kick it back over to you, and Chairman, always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you so much. I did hear a bell. I don't know if our members heard that bell. And for those of you who don't know, this was an intimate moment, an insider moment, because what that bell means is that a vote has been called, as I understand it. So I don't know whether to ask you both a question or not.
Chairman, I'll defer to you. I think we probably have time for one or two. And then...
Yeah, we have time for a couple of questions. The 400 people haven't voted, so we got a
few minutes. Okay, that's wonderful. Well, a couple of things. I'll just throw out two questions, and you can answer what you want. You can each answer, or one of you answer, or each, whatever you want. One is, I'd love for our members to hear how each of you does personally connect to the issue of keeping religion and government separate. I think we all connect from a different, sort of many different points of view, and in your own words, I think it would be very special for our members to hear. And number two is, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act has been around for a very long time, right? And so that makes some people are nervous about changing it at all. And what do you tell them? What do you tell them? So those are the two questions.
Chairman, you want to start?
Well, yeah, first of all, talking about the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, when it started, there was some of us expressed concern that it might be used as a sword rather than a shield. Everybody knew the shield part of it and why that was so important. But using it as a sword where you could actually deny people their rights was a concern. And that's why the Juno Harm Act now is a way to refine RFRA so that you can't have the weight of the federal government on the side of the person trying to discriminate. If you're like I said, the definition of victim of discrimination used to be the person who's trying to get served at a restaurant. Well, if the owner of the restaurant says that, well, I have religious reasons, I'm a white nationalist, I don't like black people, or I'm of one religion and we don't like that religion, so why should I have to serve the person? There's a restaurant down the street that the person can go to. I shouldn't have to serve him. And my response to that is, well, actually, we had that debate 50 years ago, and your side lost. And if you want to revisit the idea of civil rights, then we can revisit it. But just because you don't want to comply doesn't give you the right. And regrettably, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act lets people use religious freedom as an excuse to evade civil rights laws. And that's why this refinement, just you have your right to your religious views, but you can't use it to inflict harm on others. And just to say a word about why the issue is generally so important. Martin Luther King once said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I kind of changed that around a little bit on discrimination. Discrimination anywhere is an invitation for discrimination everywhere. And if you allow discrimination in one place, you can assume it's going to come up somewhere else.
Yep. Thank you so much. How about you, Congressman Kennedy?
Two points. So one, why do I come to this? I am a person of faith, and it's important to me. It's been important to my family. But I've also seen the way, as the chairman articulated and Rachel, as you did earlier, the way in which one's religious beliefs can be used to so powerfully infringe on the civil rights of another. And I don't believe that's right. I don't believe religion ends up being a trump card over your ability to infringe on somebody else's basic liberties and protections. I believe that's what government was actually instituted to do, literally, in the words of our founding documents, to strike that balance between an individual and the community, and how we actually calibrate those. And that can get challenging at times, but that's the point. And when you understand, as the chairman did articulate, not just the history, but the present, and the way in which, for some, the current vision of religion enables one to, in the name of your God or a higher power, be able to limit somebody else's dignity. I think that's a dangerous perspective to take.
If you could see in the chat box, our members and our staff actually in the Slack box are also, they're all taking notes on your words right now. Everyone just feels like you're hitting just the chord with our membership, and it's so meaningful to us to have such powerful voices behind this foundational part of our democracy. So I feel obliged to let you both go and vote. We are grateful for everything that you do, and we look forward to continuing to work with each of you. Thank you so much.
Take care. Good luck today.
Yeah, thanks. Wow, that was so inspiring and wonderful to have them both joining us. And I actually would be remiss if I didn't mention that there is a lead sponsor of the Juno Harm Act in the Senate as well, and that is Senator Kamala Harris. And as a lawmaker in the Senate, Senator Harris has been a stalwart champion for religious freedom, and we thank her, along with Representatives Scott and Kennedy, for all she and her team on Capitol Hill are still doing to advance the Juno Harm Act. So let me actually kind of go backwards a little bit. It was amazing to have the two members sort of hop on at the beginning of our time together, and so exciting. I just want to re-welcome you all and just say that we're here today for our National Day of Action, that this is such an important day because this is when we'll make our voices heard. So today's success really depends on you, and on you taking action. And we have 116 visits with members of Congress and their staff in the afternoon. Thank you so much to those of you who are participating in those. And we also have a variety of other actions that you can take today that, to flood congressional offices with emails, to make a splash on social media, and even a toolkit to help you if you have 20 minutes to write letters to the editor that will, that we coach you through in the toolkit so that we can appear in local papers throughout the country. And if you have time to do that today, please do it. That would be great. So you heard about the Juno Harm Act. Those of you who are lobbying are very familiar with it, but I do want to just say a word about it, which is this is a bill that is a priority piece of legislation for Americans United. And in fact, we were instrumental in helping to get the bill introduced, which is super exciting. That's the bill that we're going to be lifting up in our lobby visits today and in many of our actions today. So the Juno Harm Act would preserve the power of federal religious freedom laws to protect religious exercise. It leaves that intact, but it also clarifies that religious freedom may not be used as a weapon to cause harm. And under the Juno Harm Act, religious freedom just can't be used anymore to do things like undermine non-discrimination laws, evade labor or child abuse protections, and deny patients access to health care. Really critical things. So again, one of the most important things for you all to remember is that today's success depends on you. So please take as many actions as you can. And now we're going to move to the final portion of this program, which is for me to get to introduce to you our Vice President for Public Policy, Maggie Garrett. Hi, Maggie. Maggie's wearing a fabulous necklace today. I also wanted to point out to everyone. Maggie is going to give you all your marching orders for today's National Day of Action. And she and her team are exactly why Congressman Kennedy and Scott were appearing with us today. They've cultivated such strong relationships for our issue on Capitol Hill. And we are truly seen as the go-to people, Maggie and her team and Dina Sher and her wonderful large team, I wish I could name everyone right now, on church-state separation issues, and not just by members of Congress and their offices who'd come to us, but also by our many allies on so many other issues, you know, who rely on us equally. And that's why so many of them have participated in this conference. If you were able to catch some of our panels yesterday, they make us a lot of great friends. So under Maggie's amazing leadership, and I said it in the intro to the Congressman, we now have 209 co-sponsors in the House and 31 co-sponsors in the Senate of the Juno Harm Act, which is incredible because don't forget, in the House, there's 435 members, so we need 218 to pass a bill. So we're 9 members away. So your visits really matter. Maggie's going to be talking about it, even when you have a member who's already a co-sponsor, thanking them, asking them to push their friends to do it and elevate our messaging. It's all very important. Maggie, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I also want to start out by thanking Representatives Kennedy and Scott. I know they dropped off the meeting, but I think it's important for all of you to know how great they have been to work on this bill with. They're incredibly knowledgeable about the issue. They deeply care about it, and they're amazing champions of our cause in this bill. So it was really kind of them to join us. But most of all, I want to thank all of you for being here. It's exciting to have so many people who care about church-state separation, people from all across the country gathered here today. And I am thrilled and grateful for all of the work you have committed to do today. I talk to folks on the Hill every day. I have meetings with members of Congress and their staff. And the one thing I know firsthand is that there's no better advocates when it comes to federal legislation than all of you. At the end of the day, our lawmakers want to know what their constituents think, and they want to hear from all of you. And that's why, as Rachel would say, we need to make some noise today. So let's talk a little bit about the Do No Harm Act. You've already heard a lot about this bill yesterday in our panel on the Do No Harm Act. You heard about it from Sam and Alicia. We just heard about it from Representative Scott and Kennedy, and we heard about it from Rachel. But I want to reiterate just one more time some of the key points I think you should know. The Do No Harm Act would ensure that religious freedom is a shield to protect religious exercise, not a sword to harm others. Currently, we have a law called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, or RFRA. It was adopted in the 90s as a way to protect religious freedom, particularly for people of minority faiths. People on the right and left supported it. But over time, RFRA morphed into something else, and today is frequently being misused to harm other people. In particular, it is being manipulated to allow discrimination against LGBTQ people and religious minorities, and to deny people access to healthcare. And that is where the Do No Harm Act comes in. This Do No Harm Act is designed to restore RFRA's original intent. It will preserve the power of the law's ability to protect religious freedom, but it also clarifies that it may not be used to harm others. Here are some examples of why you should support the Do No Harm Act and why your lobbying is so important today. Based on a misinterpretation of RFRA, the Department of Health and Human Services has allowed Miracle Hill Ministries to tell Amy Madonna, who is here with us today, that she couldn't work with kids in the foster care system because she is Catholic. The Do No Harm Act would not allow RFRA to be used like this. Based on a misinterpretation of RFRA, the Trump administration has a policy that allows faith-based social service organizations to take taxpayer dollars and subject their employees to a religious litmus test. The Do No Harm Act would not allow RFRA to be used this way. And because of the misinterpretation of RFRA, the Supreme Court allowed Hobby Lobby, a huge corporation, to claim a religious freedom right to deny its employees health insurance that covers birth control. And as you guessed it, the Do No Harm Act would not allow RFRA to be used this way. Passing the Do No Harm Act is critical to ensuring religious freedom is not used to harm others. And I think that's the basics. Oh, can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm muted.
Yeah.
That was great. We have a few minutes to banter a little bit, and I'd like to ask you a few questions about the bill. Why is it important that we're lobbying on this bill today, even where we have members who are already co-sponsors?
Right. So again, you know, the first point is everybody wants to hear from you. So that's why we're here. But there are a few reasons. One, this is the issue of the moment, right? Like in the church state world, the issue of the moment is using religion to discriminate and how that's wrong. So it's timely and it is relevant. And this bill is going to make important changes. It will actually change people's lives. It will, if this bill is passed, it will change lives of, Amy Madonna and others. But it's also a really important messaging tool. It raises awareness and it allows us to talk about the other issues around the misuse of religious freedom. So the Do No Harm Act will help undo many of the bad outcomes of the misuse of religion to harm others. And when we talk about the Do No Harm Act, we get to talk about all of those other issues. We get to talk about Amy Madonna's case today. We get to talk about employment discrimination. But most of all, this work is building a foundation. We are creating momentum. We are increasing awareness. And it's true that the Do No Harm Act isn't going to pass tomorrow or even this Congress, but that doesn't mean that lobbying on it isn't important. Think of how many years it takes to pass the average bill. A version of the Equality Act, which is a bill that would expand federal non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ people, was first introduced decades ago. It's seen many iterations, it's seen many names. And here we are today with its passage in the House just last year. And it has been raised on national platforms. Taylor Swift tweets about it and has it in her music videos. And that is all about building up momentum and building up awareness. And that is why lobbying is so important. And for all the other things, letters to the editor, et cetera.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's really important that folks understand that even when they are lobbying, because a lot of folks are going to be lobbying members who have signed on, that it's still really important for like the momentum of the bill and to thank the member and ask the member to make it, to elevate it. So for all the reasons that you said, let's talk about the bill and the accusation sometimes that it's anti-religion. Maybe you can also tell us whether the faith community is engaging on our side in support of this bill at all.
Right, sure. So currently we have more than 80 organizations that are in support of this bill. They are LGBTQ groups, civil rights groups, health groups, labor groups, women's groups, secular groups. And of course, there are a ton of religious groups. We have the Friends Committee on National Legislation, the Hindu American Foundation, the National Council of Jewish Women, the National Council of Churches, the Presbyterian Church. I could go on and on of the groups that have been working on this issue. And many of these groups actually, the religious groups supported passage of RFRA to start, but now they realize that it's being misused. And they want to protect religious freedom as well as support non-discrimination laws and women's access to healthcare. One of the reasons I think that it's important for the religious community is because the other side is really taking over and misusing and morphing the idea of what religious freedom is. If you think about, where this has come from lately, and around 2013, the state started to pass some of their own RFRAs, and they did it because marriage equality was making traction across the country. And so those bills were supported with anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and a discriminatory purpose. You all probably remember the Pence interview with George Stephanopoulos, where he kept asking Pence, who was then the governor of Indiana, whether the Indiana RFRA would be used to discriminate. And he just couldn't answer the question because the answer was yes, that is what it was intended to do. But this has really tarnished religious freedom, right? So now when you hear the term religious freedom bill, you immediately think it's an anti-LGBTQ bill. That is not good for religious freedom. It isn't good for the principle of it. It isn't good for people who need religious accommodations and the kind of religious exemptions that we all would be okay with. I shouldn't say all, we would be okay with, which are, religious exemptions that aren't harming other people.
Yeah, I really appreciate you drawing attention to how there is this sort of zeitgeist right now of trying to redefine religious freedom to really be synonymous with the right to discriminate. And I'll never forget, in my first year of leading AU, a group of students from Stanford came on their spring break, and I started my time with them by asking what they associated sort of first, just quickly in their brains, with the term religious freedom. And the consensus was anti-LGBTQ. And that made me really sad. And, it also made it clear that one of the charges for Americans United was to make sure that we were reaching a new generation and a more diverse generation of leaders. And that is, of course, central to our 5-year strategic roadmap. And we just kicked off our first ever youth organizing fellowship. And those fellows are with us right now, which is super exciting. But part of what we're trying to do is to preserve the purity of religious freedom as it was intended, although recognizing that sadly there is a sordid history, from kind of the beginning of, the government misusing religion and the Bible, to advance discrimination. So, I think when you were talking about, the faith community, so, so all the different parts of the faith community supporting the bill, you may have sort of answered this question, but one question that we get asked sometimes is, with the fact and reality that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act really has allowed for so much oppression and discrimination, why aren't we just trying to repeal the whole bill? So what's the answer to that?
That is a really good question. I think it's important to remember that RFRA can be used for good, and we wanted to preserve the law's power to protect religious freedom when it wouldn't harm other people. For example, RFRA has been used to permit an exception to allow Sikh and Muslim people to serve in the military and wear beards or other articles of their faith. There's a story with an airman who he was a first generation American. He enlisted in the Air Force and he was Sikh, and he needed to keep his hair long, but in accordance with Air Force rules, he had to be clean shaven and he had to cut his hair. And so that put him in a scenario where he had to pick between serving his country and being true to his religion. And no one should be put in that scenario. And the ACLU represented him in a lawsuit, and because they used RFRA, he was granted a religious exemption. So it's stories like that that make us not want to repeal RFRA entirely.
So there are elements, and it reminds me as well of the way that RFRA came into existence in 1993, which was in response to this 1990 Supreme Court decision, Employment Division versus Smith, where peyote smoking Native Americans weren't entitled to unemployment benefits because they had participated in a religious ritual of their tradition. And folks on both sides of the aisle and sort of every part of Washington and the country were concerned that in particular religious minorities might be denied the protections that they deserve. So we've certainly seen sort of pure uses and reasons for the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Wow, it's already time for me to close this exciting opening to our National Day of Action. So for now, Maggie, unless there's any last thing that you want to say?
Just go tell your stories. Thank you for being part of this, and you're the ones who will make a real difference. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maggie. And we're just AU is so lucky to have Maggie here and on our team and fighting for all of our rights and freedoms and equality. So I'm just going to close this panel or this session by asking you all to either write down or take out your phones and find au.org/Day of Action, because that's where you'll be able to find different ways to take action today. And what I'm asking you to do is to take at least one action today. And it could be something quick, like emailing your member of Congress, and if at au.org/Day of Action, we're set up for you to do that very simply. Or it could be if you have 20 minutes to just write a letter to the editor of your local paper. Wouldn't it be exciting to see these appearing throughout the country? So that would be another great thing to do. And if you're doing a lobby visit, thank you so much. Maybe come back later to the website and take one action. So another request is, if you're not a member, and I imagine most of you are, but if you're not, please become a member today at au.org. And if you are a member, maybe you can consider asking a friend or a family member to become a member today at au.org. If you sign up, as you know, one of the best things that you'll get, other than being plugged into what's going on and with ways to take action, is our excellent monthly magazine, Church and State, which is edited by the incredible Rob Boston, who's an invaluable and beloved member of Americans United's team. So please do consider sharing with friends if you're already a member. This is my parting call to action. This is how we make change, right? It's believing in the power of each of our voices to make a difference and the collective noise that we'll make together. And that's what we're doing today. So please take action. Know that you have a community of people who will be joining you. Don't forget to tag us at #AU Advocacy Summit. And please know that AU's Board of Trustees, our staff, and I are so grateful for everything that you do, your true partnership in protecting the separation of religion and government. So go forth and advocate, and I can't wait to hear about it.